This is a partial release from what archivists have labeled Project Harmony. Declassified incident report. File fragments dated 12 to 16. The originals were heavily censored. What follows is a reconstruction assembled from leaked exhibits, intercepted logs, and witness statements. Some passages remain obscured. Where text is missing, you will hear the project code name spoken exactly as marked in the source. Harmony. Project Harmony was on paper a cultural initiative. Executive directives framed it as a public preparedness program, empathy training, identity outreach, targeted narrative normalization. The executive summary lists benign goals and quantifiable metrics: poll increases, social sentiment indices, algorithmic uplift. The language is bureaucratic, precise, almost banal, but the documents leak differently. The margins are annotated in a hand that grows less steady. A single line struck from 3 separate memos and later restored reads, "Early contact with ETE Alpha, trait accepted. Condition cultural admission." That line is dated 2025. The later exhibits, video feeds, testimony transcripts, do not read like policy. They read like negotiation. An analyst named Alex Rivera appears in these files more than any other civilian. Rivera, a data specialist with no official clearance, flagged anomalies in algorithmic outputs and in the funding streams behind public events. They followed a thread of shell companies, of talk show guests with eyes that catch wrong on camera. In one leaked clip, dismissed publicly as a hoax, a speaker's eye flickers in a way witnesses described as reptilian. Rivera's notes tie that clip to procurement lines labeled with internal jargon. Visitor exchanges. The tone of the materials transitions abruptly. Where early reports read as experiments in social engineering, later fragments reveal bargaining. Exchanges of biological data, references to conditioning structures, and a sentence blacked out in almost every copy. Harmony. In the margins, someone writes, in pencil, "Our species must acclimate or perish." This is the first of the released fragments. It is an introduction, not an explanation. It tells us 3 things clearly. 1. Project Harmony was not merely domestic policy. 2. There was direct contact with an entity designated ETE Alpha. And 3. An individual, Alex Rivera, became the unintended fulcrum of events that followed. The remainder of the file tracks the unraveling. Begin Section 1. Initial reports and the spark. Project Harmony is formally described as a covert psychosocial operation intended to prepare the public for extraterrestrial integration. The directive emphasizes narrative management, normalize otherness, acclimate populations to unfamiliar biological profiles, and reduce mass panic risk during staged disclosures. Success metrics include measured increases in inclusivity sentiment, cross-demographic tolerance indices, and decreased volatility in crisis response polling. Anomalies are acknowledged but minimized. Unexplained clustering of radicalization around specific content networks, transient outages correlating with message rollouts, and small but persistent discrepancies between reported and observed effective responses in test groups. These are classified as noise, not signal. One name appears in an early appendix: civilian analyst Alex Rivera, flagged for irregular behavioral reports following contact with Harmony-adjacent datasets. Recommendation: observe, do not engage. Exhibit A, video evidence. Source: a leaked rally clip attributed to a coalition event with unclear funding lines. The official position labels the clip a composite hoax. The speaker's right eye appears to stutter, and one frame reflects like scaled tissue, then reverts. Forensic teams offer plausible explanations. compression artifact, lens defect, malicious filter. Yet the financial trail attached to the venue routes through 3 shell entities that reappear in Harmony procurement logs under a euphemism, visitor exchanges. Rivera notes that the speaker's schedule overlaps with 2 closed meetings recorded in travel manifests. The manifests are sanitized. The attendee column displays only Harmony. Rivera underlines this 3 times in the margin. Memo 1, Alliance Protocols, marked retroactively classified. Early contact with an entity designated ETE Alpha, later given the colloquial visitors. The exchange proposed technological assistance and advisory frameworks in return for staged cultural cooperation. The directive is precise: root influence through existing identity fault lines, fracture then reconcile, so that the final synthesis is perceived as earned, not imposed. A single line preserved in pencil in one surviving copy states, "Our species must acclimate or perish." The remainder of the memo appears as Harmony in place of details: methods, channels, partner offices, contingency thresholds. Harmony, Harmony, Harmony. Testimony transcript. Subject 47. Alex Rivera. Rivera describes a personal vector. A family member changes abruptly and speech patterns harden, new phrases repeat, arguments escalate in scripted loops. Tailored content appears across their devices even after account resets. Rivera reports unlogged shutdowns, calls filled with a thin carrying static, and advertisements that reference conversations never typed. When Rivera attempts to flag the pattern, the ticketing system routes the report to a Harmony queue and closes without comment. Quote, "I thought I was tracking sentiment heat maps. Then the map started tracking me. Every time I tried to step outside the pattern, something moved to block the door. I don't think we are persuading anyone. I think we are being arranged." Entry 2. Escalation indicators. The operation deviates from model. Instead of converging on stability, regions begin to polarize more rapidly after Harmony cycles. Localized riots occur with inexplicable catalysts. Rumors that appear in no verified feed, leaders no one can name in retrospect. Multiple witnesses report non-human agitators, individuals whose skin seems to ripple under direct light, voices that distort when recorded, faces that are clear in person but blur on camera. Rivera compiles a dossier: the rally clip, procurement paths, the pencil margins on alliance protocols, a ledger of outages aligned to message pushes, and a growing index of testimonies that mention the same word when asked for missing sections: Harmony. The dossier is received, stamped as acknowledged, and placed into a review channel. Status never updates. In the final line of entry 2, the author abandons the passive register. They write, "We are losing control of the story. It is telling itself." Exhibit B, Data Analysis Log. Rivera partners with an external contact operating under the Handle ShadowNet to decrypt components of the Harmony codebase. The architecture is not merely recommender logic. It embeds carrier tones, mathematical patterns that repeat across image hashes, caption timings, and nanosecond offsets in audio peaks. ShadowNet calls them signal lattices. When visualized, the lattices map to non-human phonetics, a grammar not built for vocal cords. Rivera's conclusion is undramatic but final. This is not persuasion. It is conditioning. Margin note: Harmony. A second note pressed hard into the page until it tears. Consent was assumed. Field Report 3. Contact event. During a protest organized around media manipulation claims, Rivera observes a figure whose presence alters the crowd's cadence. Chance drift. Cadence sinks, then collapses. Under a street lamp, the figure's skin ripples as if catching a frequency, and the recorded voice warps on every device, pitch unstable, consonants doubled. The figure speaks to Rivera in a register the mic fails to capture, but Rivera's transcript supplies the text. We grow impatient. Integration cannot wait. When questioned who is we, the figure answers with a single word. Harmony. Memo 2. Societal Impact Assessment. The internal assessment abandons optimism. Riots escalate in cities that previously modeled low volatility. Trust in government indices break below historical floors. The memo frames the downturn as a messaging problem and proposes deeper cycles, tighter loops, increased narrative flooding. In the margin, an unapproved note contradicts the body. Our partners threaten unilateral disclosure. A final paragraph is replaced in full with harmony. The memo's author initials appear below the blankness, then are crossed out 3 times. Interrogation log. A disillusioned agent is detained after attempting to exfiltrate Harmony subroutines. Under questioning, they describe 2 factions within the visitors. Those who argue for coexistence structured, negotiated, and those who consider human consent an obstacle to be engineered around. The agent references experiments already underway, carried out in clinical settings shielded by joint operational clauses. The transcript jumps. Where methods, sites, and oversight bodies should be named, the word harmony repeats at measured intervals, like a metronome. The agent's final clear sentence reads, "You can't secure a door that was designed without hinges." Global Annex International Reports. Parallel programs surface abroad. Narrative flooding aligned to foreign language feeds. Outages correlated with content spikes. Crowd behaviors that fail to model under human-only assumptions. Diplomatic cables move from cautious to caustic within days. Blackouts roll through capitals in synchronized bands. Cyber attacks unfold with signatures that match no known human adversary. Rivera collects translated fragments where the redactions differ. Across languages, the same substitution appears. Harmony. 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 Entry 3. Critical threshold. The Harmony files leak en masse, hundreds of documents cross-posted, mirrored, annotated by amateurs and experts alike. Public paranoia spikes then hardens into collective demand. Disclose everything. Official statements contradict the leaks, then each other. Conspiracy and fact blend until neither can be teased apart. Rivera is targeted. An incident occurs, date and location listed, then replaced by harmony. The medical record is partial. The discharge summary is intact. Conclusion. Survived. Field Report 4. Pursuit log. Raids follow with some sanctioned, others not. Secure sites are found unstaffed but still humming, screens filled with lattice patterns and unfamiliar cartography. Rivera and a small circle extract artifacts, etched maps whose coordinates do not conform to terrestrial grids. Intercepted transmissions that, when slowed, produce harmonics outside human range. And refrigerated evidence labeled human hybridization programs with chain of custody fields overwritten by harmony. The log ends mid-sentence. The final characters on the page are a date stamp and the word harmony. Then nothing. Exhibit C, Disclosure Event. The summit is convened under extraordinary secrecy. Attendee lists circulate with names intact for ministers and chiefs, but whole columns are replaced by harmony. Rivera and allied analysts penetrate the perimeter as contractors, carrying forged credentials stitched from the leaks. Inside, the visitors are present without euphemism, faces that stabilize only when watched directly, voices that register in minutes as familiarity rather than sound. Negotiation notes captured line by line show a single non-negotiable term from the visitors. Immediate public reveal. Governments answer with sequencing, with windows, with harm minimization models. The minutes capture the drift from deliberation to delay. A margin annotation, not Rivera's hand, reads, "We have used the people as habitat. Now the habitat resists." The session descends into harmony. The official communique released that evening denies that any meeting occurred. Incident log, climactic engagement. Street-level events begin simultaneously in multiple capitals. Protest crowds splinter along lines no one planned. The first hybrids manifest with a failure of disguise rather than an act of show. A blink too slow, a patch of skin that does not sweat, a lilt of speech that acquires counterpoint. These are not singular beings. They are gradients crossing in public, and once seen cannot be unseen. Security forces clash with formations that do not map to riot algorithms. Footage was scraped before takedowns and shows moments of contact. Hands that do not recoil from chemical agents. Eyes that reflect city lights and planes rather than points. The incident logs fill with partials. The intact segments repeat the same substitution at each place where chain of command should clarify responsibility. Harmony. Final incident report. Project Harmony is declared terminated. The stated outcome is neither victory nor defeat. Partial integration achieved. The visitors now appear openly in designated spaces, with new identification frameworks and joint operating procedures. The cost is not enumerated. Indexes of loss are included as categories, not numbers. Infrastructure, trust, language. An appendix lists personnel with final statuses. Many entries are ordinary. One is not. Rivera, Alex, Harmony. A separate line. Public-facing narrative. Disinformation analyst, retired. The public file ends there. Addendum. Unresolved threads. A recently recovered memo proposes a successor to Harmony, titled Echo Protocol. The objective is to rebuild legitimacy using counterpoint rather than chorus. Allow contradictions to surface, then tune them until dissent becomes accompaniment. The memo claims the method is humane. The signature block is harmony. The final line in the recovered set is not a conclusion, but an instruction to future custodians of the archive. This file is not complete. What else remains buried? The sentence is followed by a page of harmony and the faint impression of words pressed through from a missing sheet. The impression, when shaded, resolves to a name. It is not Rivera's. Project Harmony ends on paper, not in practice. The documents stop. The patterns do not. Where numbers should be, there are categories. Where names should be, there is harmony. And in the margin of the last recovered page, a single word appears in a different hand. Echo. If you possess fragments or phrases, logs, impressions that do not belong to any public record, preserve them. Patterns are clearest at the seam where stories disagree. If you want the next file, Echo Protocol, signal it. Leave the word echo so the system registers your request. Follow this channel to receive the next recovered narration the moment it surfaces. Share this record with one person who thinks Harmony was only a rumor. The archive is incomplete. If you're still listening, you're part of its reconstruction.